This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. This historic day of action, more than 800 sibling protests around the world urging lawmakers to pass gun control. In Washington, organizers say up to 800,000 people took part in the March for Our Lives, organized by the students who survived the Valentine's Day shooting massacre at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Democracy Now! Was doing a multi-hour broadcast from the streets, speaking to young people like Natalia Rodriguez, who came up with her family from Miami.
I'm a sophomore from Miami. We all from Miami 305 representing.
A sophomore in
Miami Springs Senior High and High School.
And what are you doing here? What does your sign say?
So we're supporting Emma. We're supporting March for Our Lives. We're here to advocate for common sense gun laws. I'm here with Students Demand Action, Miami chapter, as well as here with DC chapter.
And tell us, read us your sign and tell us.
Power to the people, but students, teachers, and women are here representing, and we're here to make change.
And you have a picture of Emma Gonzalez.
Yes, and John Lennon, and we also have different signs. Power to the students.
And why did you decide on Emma, one of the student survivors at Marjory Stoneman Douglas?
Her speech was so inspiring. I didn't know any other person that would represent what I'm advocating for more.
As a high school student, what makes you think you can change what people haven't changed in decades and taking on one of the most powerful interests, the National Rifle Association?
I feel like the wrong thing hit in the right place this time. And I feel like students are fed up. I feel like the upcoming generation is doing what this generation isn't. And this generation of politicians isn't doing what our generation wants. And they'll listen. If not, we'll vote them out.
And do you feel like we treat violence differently in white communities and Black and Latino communities?
This has been going on in Black communities for forever, and I feel like now that it hit in a white demographic, that now politicians are listening to the students and their outspoken words because it hit where it hit, and I feel like the wrong thing hit in the right place.
So you're right next to Congress. What are you saying they should do?
We'll vote you out if you don't agree with us.
When President Trump says arm the teachers, your response?
Arm teachers with supplies. We can barely afford papers and pens, and now all of a sudden you have the money to arm teachers with guns. I think that teachers aren't paid the amount of money that they should, and now you're trying to bear them with arms. I don't think that that's a plausible way to do this. I think that that only shows how our country is going in that direction. That is Natalia Rodriguez, Democracy Now!'s youth correspondent, Soledad Aguilar-Colón from Beacon High School, a public high school here in New York, came with us to Washington, D.C. and interviewed other young people at the protest.
I'm Soledad. I'm with Democracy Now! Can you tell me your name?
My name's Alana Willinson.
Your age, please?
I'm 13 years old.
Why did you guys decide to come here today?
We decided to come here because I don't want to be scared walking into school. I want more gun reform laws, and I just want, all in all, just for people to be safe, and I want just people to live good lives. Like, this isn't the America that I wanted to grow up in. I wanted to grow up in an America with peace, not an America where kids are constantly getting killed by assault weapons.
We're known as the mass shooting generation. How do you think that this has affected our lives?
I think that that's, like, the fact that we're even known as that generation is so disgusting, and I feel that the fact that people even can hold assault weapons in this day and time is just disgusting. They're not made for hunting. They're made for actual. That's why they're called assault weapons. They're made for assaulting people.
Democracy Now! Spoke to people from all over the country. There were sibling marches in so many cities, but also many people came from, well, for example, Chicago.
Father Mike Flager from St. Sabina in Chicago.
Talk about the issue in your parish.
Well, we live in the south side of Chicago where violence is an everyday thing. We live in a trauma center, and we don't have post-traumatic stress. We have present traumatic stress. Our neighborhood is filled with balloons and teddy bears and yellow police tape and sirens and helicopters. That's the music of our community. And it's been ignored and neglected constantly over and over again. And it's a shame on Chicago. We just heard, Amy, the other day, last week, that the United States Navy medics are now sending to the Stroger Hospital in Chicago for training because it's the closest thing they can find in America to a battlefield. We should be ashamed of that. The governor, the mayor, the president, every elected official should be ashamed of that in this country. Our black and brown lives don't matter. And I'm so glad that the people from Parkland, we flew them in last week. They met with our young people for the whole day. And John and others were there. We met with them and said, we want to connect the dots. They want to connect the dots with us.
So, Father, what are you doing in your parish, this city that is a trauma center, Chicago?
Right. Well, we started about 7 years ago. We do Friday night walks every night. We hired 4 ex-gang members that work full-time on staff. We started a program called Strong Futures to take 50 at-risk youth and put them into jobs and stability. These are all people with felonies. Here's what happened. 50 people with felonies. We spent $6,500 on them. That's total in a year. And now 46 of them are working full-time jobs. It's $42,000 if they go to prison. It's $110,000 if they get shot. So people who don't care about our young people in Chicago, if for no other reason, it's a business decision to care about our young people. $6,500 is much better than $42,000. We can turn lives around. It's not that we can't end this violence. We don't have the will to end this violence because the NRA and the politicians care about themselves and care about their lily white communities and don't care about the black and brown west and south side Chicago.
Do you feel like Parkland is helping to pierce the veil even in Chicago?
Oh, absolutely. And the Parkland students and Chicago students are united. And we want to unite with Brooklyn. We want to unite with Philly. We want to unite with South Central. Young people are doing something the adults didn't do. They're moving above race. They're moving above creed and culture and faith. They're coming together, Jews, Christians, Muslims, bonding together as young people. And you know what else young people are doing? They're impatient. They have phones. They want something, they want the answer right now. I love that about our young people. Stay impatient, because the adults have gotten used to this madness in our country. Young people fight back.
Father Mike Pfleger, and we spoke to student journalist survivors from Stoneman Douglas High School.
My name is Brianna Fisher, and I'm a sophomore from Parkland, Florida, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and I'm a staff writer for our school newspaper, The Eagle Eye.
Hi, my name is Lainey Steinhardt, and I'm a sophomore at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. I'm also a staff writer at Eagle Eye.
I'm Zoe Gordon. I'm a sophomore at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. I'm 15 years old, and I'm also a staff writer for the Eagle Eye magazine.
So, Zoe, let's start with you on that terrible day, unbelievably enough, Valentine's Day, February 14th, the massacre at your school. You're a reporter, you're a student. Talk about where you were, your feelings, and your thoughts as a journalist.
Yeah, that was a really hard day, and it took me a couple weeks to kind of, I don't know, just feel like a little uplifted again. I know that I had to report on it as a journalist. It's important to cover what I went through so that others know and speak up for the voices that were unfortunately we lost that day.
That day, the day of the shooting, where were you in school?
I was in my chemistry class at the time.
And was it in the building, the freshman
It was
building?
not in the freshman building, but it was in the building next to it.
And when did you come to understand what was happening?
I don't think I still came to understand what's happening. It hasn't really hit me yet that it's all actually happening. You know, you hear schools like Sandy Hook and Columbine, and you never want to imagine your school on the same list as those. So I don't think it's hit any of us yet that it actually happened.
So talk about when you moved into journalism gear. I mean, you have done so much in this month. Did you all just edit the Guardian newspaper?
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing opportunity. They're amazing. They're an amazing publication, and I think it was really an honor to work alongside them through this and really show us the true side of journalism.
It's great that they're letting us use their platform and to let us speak out and share our voices. So that's not just Parkland, Florida, who hears this, and that's the rest of the world.
Now, what sign are you carrying, Zoe, on this day?
I made a sign that has front and back.
Read it to us.
It says, on February 14th, I should have been studying for world history. Instead, I was praying that the shooter wouldn't come into my classroom next. And it's kind of impactful. And the other side says, here's an equation for you, love over guns. And then it says, books over bullets, number 2 pencils over AR-15s, and A's over PTSD. So it just, both both are kind of very meaningful to me and very impactful, especially the first one because it's my story. I was planning to go home that day. I was planning to skip dance so that I can study for my big AP World test the next day. I was stressed out after I finished my math lesson. I was like reaching in my bag to get my world history textbook to start studying right when everything was happening. It's just so crazy.
What was it like to return to school after the mass shooting?
It actually felt somewhat nice to come back to school because you saw all this love from, like, the outpouring of love from the entire country, not just local schools, but from literally every single one. So I just love seeing my teachers again, and even though it's like hard going to classes where some of my classmates that unfortunately didn't make it out like they were in that class, it was hard, but it was just so nice seeing the ones that were there.
The mass shooting generation. Watch our full 4-hour special broadcast of the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. at democracynow.org. Happy birthday to Noreen Sheikh. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.